Well, all things are impermanent, so we don't know how long life lasts and health lasts. But if life and health permits, then I'm due to take part in a workshop that is happening in BSWA in November on gradual training. So this is just also letting people know. It starts on the 15th of November for 5 consecutive Saturdays, and pretty much from 8:30 to about 2:30. And every session there will be different combination of teachers doing that. But just letting you know, so if you are interested, I think it will be live streamed, so you may be able to join. So anyway, so one of the sessions I'm doing with Bante Mudito, and we decided to call our session our own name. We can do whatever we like. Where is happiness in the path? Well, he asked me this question because he's like, is it all about suffering, 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 and restraining and suffering? Or is there happiness on the path? So he said, let's call it Where is Happiness on the Path? And then see what happens. So this afternoon, we had a little bit of a chat to get started about it. And so I thought, let me just speak to that. So some of you may be thinking, oh, well, the path is all about happiness. What are you talking about, Venerable? But this is not the view of everybody, right? Some people, when they hear about the Buddhist path, especially if they're not Buddhists also, when they first hear, they think, my goodness, And I have a story from Ajahn Brahm's life. Some of you may have heard this story, but it's a really good one. So when he was a young monk, he used to teach at the prisons, right? I don't think he does it anymore. His other monks do. And, so the prisoners then ask, tell us about your lifestyle. What do you monks do? What's your day like? So he said, oh, we wake up around about 3 a.m. They said, 3 a.m.? They said, oh, no, but it's optional. Then they sighed, oh, thank goodness. He said, it's optional. You can get up earlier. Ajahn Brahm being Ajahn Brahm, being funny. So then they said, oh, we have breakfast, something simple in the morning. Then we have to work at the monastery, and then we have lunch, but we don't eat anything after. There's no dinner, there's no snacking, nothing after 12. And they go, no dinner? And then we live in a hut in the forest, a simple hut. There's no electricity. Often, sometimes there's water, sometimes not even water, no toilet. And we sleep on the floor, maybe on a mat, depending on where you are, but very simple place. And then he said, okay, no TV, no TV. They went, and no music, no singing, no dancing, no playing sport. And when they heard all of that, they temporarily forgot, and they had so much compassion for Ajahn Brahm. Said, why don't you come and stay with us at the prison? Because they said, we have 3 lovely meals. We have really kind of like a buffet. Of course, we have some selection. We can watch TV. We can listen to music. We play sport. We don't have to certainly get up at 3 o'clock. We don't have to meditate. They forgot that they laughed because they're in prison. But it's funny, right? Sometimes. But the difference is the monastics, they're happy and they want to be there. It's voluntary, right? Nobody put us in the monastery. I said, you stay there. We chose to be here. We came voluntarily. Yeah. We signed up for it ourselves. And we can leave when we want, if we want to, but nobody wants to. Yeah, usually they are here, and we would have to be very mad to be here if you're only suffering, right? There might be some people who are like that, I don't know, like enjoy suffering and want to be at a place where it's suffering. As usually, most people don't want to stay and suffer. We are here because it has happiness. Yeah, that's the reason. And prisoners, of course, if they have, even though they have all of those things which you think as what brings happiness, they can't wait to get out of the prison. So this is the difference, right? So this is why sometimes when people hear about the monastic lifestyle, this is just the surface only, and then go to, wow, nuns have 311 rules to keep. My goodness, they ask. And how come nuns have 311, and how come monks only have 227? We are special. That's right. We have more precepts, so more better. Yeah, higher. Just joking. Yeah, nothing like that. It's just the two genders are different, circumstances are different. That's all. But the thing is, you think about keeping precepts, restraining, and can't do this, can't do that. It's just only 311 precepts in the Patimokkha. But there is countless other precepts and ways of doing things and rules in the Kandakas of how to do various things. And if that is not enough, every monastery also has rules, called house rules of how you do things. This is when people rebel against it. I want my way. I want my freedom. Why are these stupid things here? This sounds stupid according to how I see things. These kinds of stuff. And people can suffer. But anyway, whatever it is, so if you only focus on that, some people might think and might hesitate even to take up monastic life. I mean, some people have been meditating and practicing for a long time. With me, when I was a layperson and practicing, and the practice is going so well, and I was sort of considering, oh, I should become a monastic. One of my biggest concerns that I was hesitating. I love my long hot shower. And I thought when I go to the monastery, I can't have my long hot shower. It's so funny. So, so I was at a retreat with a Burmese monk as a layperson, and I was telling him this story about my long hot shower, and I'm worried about not being able to have it. So therefore, I'm not sure whether I want to become a nun. So when I was a nun at Dhammasara, he came to visit, and he asked me my name, and he said, "You should change your Pali name to whatever Pali says, long hot showers." So it's really funny what things can bother us. What are the concerns we have? Like, what can I eat? Where will I sleep? And some people, when they see our kuti, say, "You have no toilet. How can you manage? There is no electricity." You know, all these things. Sometimes it's the smallest thing, but it can be an issue, whatever it is. So, all of these things can sometimes, if you look into these external things, material things, they matter. But if you only rely on this, because this is what our normal lay life is, right? Before we take up the spiritual path, we find happiness in our material comforts, in our relationships, and all those things that we enjoy, like music or watching things and going places and whatever those things. So of course, then that matters, and we don't really understand where real true happiness come from, and we don't also understand the limitations of those other kinds of happiness. Yes, they have gratification, very little, which is why we have to keep doing, and they rob us of. We spend fortunes in our lifetime, right? Taking those things because they are not free. But there is free happiness to be had if we know where to find it. And this is all in the path, the entire path, the entire Buddhist path is a path of happiness, starting from small happiness, and it goes all the way, builds up into complete bliss and beyond. Yeah. So this is the truth, and this is the secret to why people stay, who stay in monastic life long term, because their focus of happiness is not in the place that we are normally used to look for happiness, right? So then, so we were having a discussion, and Bante Mudito and myself, and we realized, well, it starts from faith or confidence in the Buddha. Does that bring actually happiness? Because for some people, having faith is like kind of stupid, because what's faith got to do with anything, they think, because sometimes the faith, the English word, has a lot of different connotations coming from different religious backgrounds, and how the blind faith, and how people are so averse to that, just believing in somebody and something without really being able to verify it, or even experiencing anything, the results in this life, and waiting to experience this after death. So they don't know what's going to happen, they just believe. So because of that, it's really hard. But the word saddha is not quite translated, it's not translatable in that quite way, but the English word we use is faith and confidence. But it's interesting to contemplate, how can faith and confidence bring happiness, or does it bring happiness? Yeah. So I want to just read out. I may not be able to do everything. Faith itself, confidence itself, is a huge topic. Can spend a whole talk or even a series of talks on that as well. And this is also one of the weakest in most of us in the modern day. We are probably more into knowledge, to wisdom, to these kinds of aspects, but this faith and confidence, or shraddha, is not that strong, because our intellectual mind and all those things, the sense of self and our views and opinions, get in the way of these things sometimes, right? So anyway, so with that in mind, I just want to read this, kind of interesting. Let's see where this talk goes anyway. So this is from Anguttara Nikaya, Numerical Discourses, chapter 8, sutta number 54, called Digajanu Sutta. Okay, I might not read the whole sutta, but just some extracts. So I'll start. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Kolians, near the Kolian town named Kakkarapatta. There the young Kolian Digajanu approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side, and said to him, Bhante, we are laymen enjoying sensual pleasures, living at home in a house full of children. We use sandalwood from Kasi. We wear garlands, scents, and unguents. We receive gold and silver. Let the Blessed One teach us the Dhamma in a way that will lead to our welfare and happiness in this present life and in future lives. Interesting, right? Why he said all of those things. He's saying, don't ask, ask us to give up my luxurious Kasi, clothes. It's like the Versace or the Gucci these days. Even now in India, Kasi and Benares silk is the top silk and clothing now also, right? And all these luxuries in life, and their children and everything, they want to have it all, and also find happiness in this life and also in future life. So that's why he made that kind of statement, I believe. And then the Buddha says, there are Vyagapajja. So Vyagapajja is, I believe, his surname. So as saying Mr. Vyagapajja, there are 4 things that lead to the welfare and happiness of a clansman in the present life. What 4? Accomplishment in initiative, accomplishment in protection, good friendship, and balanced living. So accomplishment in initiative, accomplishment in protection, good friendship, and balanced living, right? So if these are also part of the spiritual path, right? So we can also look into this, because his question itself is about happiness, but I'm going to just focus on just using this sutta to also explain where faith and confidence comes from. So this is, its first part is about finding happiness in this life, present life. So one of the factors is about having good friendship. So I'm going to go right into the good friendship part and read that bit, because you can read out the whole sutta, because that also shows all the the things that can bring happiness in addition to, because I was going to focus more on the Noble Eightfold Path. But anyway, here, so in this section it says, and what is good friendship? Here, in whatever village or town a clansman live, he associate with householders or their sons, whether young but of mature virtue, or old of mature virtue, who are accomplished in faith, virtuous behavior, generosity, and wisdom. So the things, the qualities, so he says, so if you, a good friend is somebody who has these four qualities. Whether they're young or old, it doesn't matter, but they have to have a maturity in virtue, maturity in faith, maturity in generosity, and wisdom, right? He converses with them and engages in discussion with them. In so far as they are accomplished in faith, he emulates them with respect to their accomplishment in faith. In so far as they are accomplished in virtuous behavior, he emulates with respect to their accomplishment in virtuous behavior. Insofar as they are accomplished in generosity, he emulates them with respect to their accomplishment in generosity. Insofar as they are accomplished in wisdom, he emulates them with respect to their accomplishment in wisdom. This is called good friendship. So there's a reason why I picked this up, because also in other suttas, similar we have spoken before, like Avijja Sutta, which is Anguttara 1061, the whole spiritual path starts with meeting a Kalyana Mitta or a good friend. So this is important. And also the Buddha himself is our first Kalyana Mitta, the good friend, or anybody who teaches the Dhamma and who practices these teachings. And, so this is important to know. And how can being with such a person, associating such a person, also brings happiness to life? Yeah. So this is important. If otherwise, if we associate a teacher or a friend who leads you to misery, unwholesome states arising and wholesome states going down, well, that's dangerous, because associations is really important, because we are conditioned. But also this shows, how these things work, how if you want to build up a good quality, the best way is to hang out with people who have the good quality. But if you hang out with people with the not so good qualities or harmful qualities, before long, you too will be going that way. Like, for example, if you hang around with people who are not mindful, like mindless people, you will very soon find out you will also end up becoming very mindless. On the other hand, if you live with a bunch of people who are a lot more mindful, then it helps you to develop mindfulness. In the same way, if you want to grow in virtue, then it's helpful to live with people or associate virtuous people. Same if you want to grow in faith and confidence, associating these people is important. And also even for wisdom, yeah, even the wisdom is individual at the end, with the insights arise in your own mind, but hanging out with people with wisdom is a very helpful cause and condition for growing them. But not only limited to those, but when you hang around with good friends who are practicing well, who are wise and virtuous at the very least, and also generous and has confidence in the Buddha, then you will grow and learn many more good qualities. But then again, it's very hard to find people who are perfect in these things, right? And who have many of these qualities and all of these qualities. So we just have to find out whoever is available, what they have, and then know what the limits are. And then you can have multiple friends. Okay, you can hang around with people who have faith, so you can grow in faith. You can also hang around with people who have virtue, but often these things go together. So they have, but then some people have one factor or two factors much more stronger, in them than the others. So you can, and this is also what is interesting, living in a monastic community with a number of monastics who have these different qualities. So you can get and rub off or get it through osmosis, so to speak, by hanging around. But of course, when you live in a community, it's a mix. It's these days it's really hard to live in a community of all enlightened beings. Enlightened beings are quite rare. So of course, when we live amongst a group of an enlightened beings, so people who are practicing towards that, they will be mixed. They will have good qualities as well as some defilements and stuff. So we have to learn to just, uh, imbue the good, and we leave to one side the what is not so good. That's what the Buddha said in the Removing Resentment Sutta, which I have also spoken before, and you hear Ajahn Brahmali talks about it a lot. I'm not going to bring that up just yet because it's will divert our attention from today's topic. But just to know that this is important. The Buddha says, having faith, having virtue, yeah, living with wisdom and generosity. These four things bring happiness in this very life. Yeah, and we can look back into all of these four qualities, even though I only read out one of them because of the time. You can read the whole sutta and contemplate deeper. If I don't get to it, you can also see where are these things? Where is faith on the Noble Eightfold Path? Where is virtue on the Noble Eightfold Path? And where is a generosity and wisdom on the Noble Eightfold Path? Then you can quickly see, yes, Noble Eightfold Path brings happiness in this very life, right? And then the Buddha goes on to saying something more, right? He says, uh, and he says, there are Vyagapaja, these four other things that lead a clansman's welfare and happiness in future lives, because he wanted both this life and future lives. What for? And there he talks about accomplishment in faith, accomplishment in virtue was behavior, accomplishment in generosity, and accomplishment in wisdom. Sorry, I was remembering this part and I mentioned about that because that was the quality of the good friend. But that those four qualities that we get from the good friend, the main four qualities, are also the four qualities that lead to happiness in the future lives, because the four qualities were different, right? Because it was accomplishing initiative, accomplishment in protection, friendship, and balanced living was the first four. So these other four, which I had in my mind, were the ones that actually lead to happiness in the future life. And these four are also definitely, you can easily see in the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah. And I'm just only going to read out also. And what is accomplishment in faith? Here, a clansman is endowed with faith. He places faith in the enlightenment of the Tathagata Das. The Blessed One is an Arahant. And then he goes on all the nine fact qualities of a Buddha, Arahant, Samma, Sambuddho, all of those things, right? And then he's the teacher of devas and humans, the enlightened one, the blessed one. This is called accomplishment in faith, right? So this is really interesting. So just to show, the Buddha says, faith is an important factor that brings happiness also into the future lives. But also very interesting part is coming up in another beautiful sutta. There are so much, so there's not I can bring up everything, but there is this Mahanama Sutta, which is really beautiful. It is also on the same book, Anguttara 11:11, right? So in here, the Buddha says, So the Buddha says this is again a extract. You can read the whole sutta, but just to show what the Buddha has to say about this thing. Mahanama, a person with faith succeeds, not one without faith. An energetic person succeeds, not one who is lazy. One with mindfulness established succeeds, not one who is muddle minded. One who is concentrated, but that is for meditation, succeeds, not one who is unconcentrated. One who is wise succeeds, not one who is unwise. Having established yourself in these five qualities, you should further develop six things. What was Mahanama's? Okay, let me just read, going back. Mahanama's question. Bante, I have heard a number of bhikkhus are making a robe for the Blessed One, thinking that with his robe completed at the end of the 3 months of rain's residence, the Blessed One will set out wandering. Bante, with all our various engagements, how should we dwell? So before the Buddha goes away, he wanted to get some advice, this Mahanama. So then this was the advice the Buddha gives to him, right? So he says, what are the qualities if you want to succeed in your spiritual journey that is helpful? So here the Buddha also says about the faith, but what is even more interesting is that then he talks about doing the reflections, what is called anusati bhavana, right? These six other things are the reflections that you can build. When you reflect in this way, joy or gladness arise in the mind, and that is the first condition that you need to be able to meditate really well. When you have pamojja or gladness in the mind, then everything else from that point onwards is pretty much automatic, yeah, in the sense because they build up on the other factors. So, and there are many ways of bringing up pamojja, and one of the ways is to reflect the good qualities. Yeah, here Mahanama, you should recollect the Tathagata Das. The Blessed One is an Arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct. Fortunate knower of the world, unsurpassed trainer of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans, the enlightened one, the Blessed One. When a noble disciple recollects the Tathagata on that occasion, his mind is not obsessed by lust, hatred, or delusion. On that occasion, his mind is simply straight, based on the Tathagata. A noble disciple whose mind is straight gains inspiration in the meaning, gains inspiration in the Dhamma, gains joy connected with the Dhamma. When he is joyful, rapture arises. For one with rapturous mind, the body becomes tranquil. One tranquil in the body feels pleasure. For one feeling pleasure, the mind becomes concentrated. This is called the noble disciple who dwells in balance amid an unbalanced population, who dwells unafflicted amid an afflicted population, as one who has entered the stream of the Dhamma, he develops recollection of the Buddha. And a similar kind of thing goes for the qualities of Dhamma, for the qualities of the Sangha. So when we have faith, like all the confidence in the Buddhist path, it is for the triple gem. First, for the Buddha, and having confidence that Buddha was fully enlightened, and having confidence in what he taught, that he was a wise person, an enlightened being, and taking on board his instructions. So this is faith, right? So even if you think about it, can you even go to school and learn anything if you didn't have some form of faith and confidence in your teacher and what they teach? If you start doubting, you learn nothing, right? So we have some confidence that they know. If they're a history teacher, you think they know about the history and you take on board what they say. If they're a maths teacher, you know that you have confidence that they know what they're teaching and you take it on board. So having that, at least, very mundane form of faith is necessary for us to learn anything, right? So in the same way with the Buddha's path as well, we have to have initial faith to even listen and apply, try it out. If you don't have that kind of initial faith or confidence, we can't even try out. But when we try the instructions, when take up the precepts, or you live according to the Noble Eightfold Path, then when it starts to bring the fruits that the Buddha says it will in this very life, here and now, some of these things are even immediately experienced. Then our faith turns into real strong confidence, because now it's no longer just blind, we're just blindly believing it, we are experiencing, we apply it, and we see, yes, this is true, and it gets stronger. So when we have this kind of very validated, kind of really strong faith, confidence, it is incredibly, it brings a lot of joy, because that's what they say, when you have that confidence in the Dhamma, yeah, when you hear the Dhamma, this joy comes up because it makes sense. You know that it is true. You know that when you live that kind of life, it brings peace to your mind. Yeah, it is very freeing. So all of these things are connected to that Dhamma. You get joy and the mind uplifts. This is not uncommon for many of you who loves the Dhamma, who are interested in listening to the suttas, studying the suttas. You know what this is like, yeah? Some suttas, when you read, when you learn, incredible joy springs up in your mind. This is this Dhamma joy, yeah, born of that joy, gladness, but it can't come if you don't have faith, because that's where it's rooted. If you have, because you have faith and confidence in these teachings, this is what brings that joy and confidence. And also a lot of gratitude that comes to the Buddha and his teachings also comes again with that faith and confidence. So that's why faith is also one of the most important starting factors, and also the one of the faculties, yeah, important faculties that drive us on the path. So this is important to develop faith in the right way, and it brings a lot of joy to our heart. But not only that, in another sutta, I think in the Bhayabhairava Sutta and other places in the Jagga Sutta and things like that, the Buddha says, if there is some fear comes up, if you're, have goosebumps coming up, your mind has a lot of anxiety and worry, and all of these things come up, when you recollect the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, then you are no longer under that defilement. Yeah, you're free from that worry, the fear, the anxiety departs. Yeah, because that's how strong this faith and confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha is. It has a protective quality. It brings joy when it's done in the right way. Yeah, it's quite powerful. So starting from faith and confidence, we get joy. And when then somebody listens, then when they have faith and confidence in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and then they listen, they lend an ear, and they learn. And when they get inspired enough, yeah, inspiration is also a form of joy, yeah. Then they want to become a renunciant. They go forth, right? But going forth is not just only for about this. This is what we were talking with Bhante Mudito as well, because not everybody is going to be able to go forth as in become monastics. Of course, that is great if you have that in your heart and you have the opportunity and the right conditions for that. That's great. But that does not mean that you can't live the path and walk this path as a lay person. So how do you go forth in some way? So this is not really the going forth that is usually meant as becoming a monastic, but you can go to the refuge, yeah, to the Buddha. You go for refuge to the Dhamma, go to refuge to the Sangha, yeah. So this is also a form of going, yeah, but going to refuge to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. That's itself, you can see as well how you take it on board. And the Buddha says this is incredibly powerful in Velama Sutta. I can't remember the reference for this, but in the Velama Sutta, the Buddha says, what brings the highest form of merit, like it goes in a sequence. And it starts with a very small kind of dana somebody offers, to a dana where they offer hundreds of, vessels, gold filled with silver, silver filled with gold, and vessels filled with food and medicine and all kinds of things, and offering all of those things to the Buddha and the entire enlightened Sangha. Yeah, so much Aryan. So this can be like the really highest form of material dana one could imagine. Right, that we cannot imagine any more than that. And it is of incredible, enormous, vast, immeasurable kind of almost merit. But then he says, much more than that, many folds more than that, is going to refuge to Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami. But doing it not like a parrot, but with full understanding, and you know what you mean, and you really go with that understanding because you have found confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha as a place of security, a place where it brings joy, a place that is safe, a place that truly protects you when you are in trouble, gives solutions to difficulties. All of those things you realize, because the normal world, in people in the world, find refuge in money, in education, in your affluent context, and all these other things like insurances, all many things. But of course, those things can bring some degree, but can your money take away your pain? That can reduce a little bit, but especially your heartache. Can your money take away your heartache? Can your money stop you from dying? Can money stop your old age? Yes, you can get rid of your old looks by plastic surgery, but the inside of your body, the aging of that cannot be changed, right? So there are many things that these other things cannot. These are forms of suffering, but they cannot, find any refuge in these external other things. But in the Buddha and the Dhamma and Sangha, the Buddha and his teachings and the enlightened monastic order, they can provide good refuge for one. And knowing that when you go, it brings incredible joy, incredible freedom, and it is a support for your meditation. Because that's what that sequence was, right? When I read it out, the Buddha said, once you have connected gladness, bringing up connected to that joy in the Dhamma, joy in the meaning, yeah, with the Buddha and his qualities as well, then that joy leads to rapture. Rapture leads to tranquility. Tranquility leads to happiness. Happiness leads to samadhi. Yeah, so this is how you meditate. So faith and confidence is incredibly important, and it brings all of those other joys. And that's just another way to see how incredible joys are available, and all of those things. Yeah. Rapture is a form of joy. Tranquility is a form of joy. Happiness is happiness. Yeah. And all of these things, and deep samadhi is bliss. So all of these places, there is just only happiness, not suffering. So there is so much happiness to be found in the path. And this is just looking at the path from the point of view of meditation psychology, right? That's just showing you that. But before than that, right? Before than that, where there is. So starting from faith. Then I want to look into just briefly, yeah, the best part is when you do your own contemplation. I'm just giving you like a suggestion for something, because the Buddha says it's really important that you do these things doing that mental inspection, right? Because the way that you take on board the Buddha's teachings and apply it, there are 5 steps. Yeah, 5. You can explain it in 5 steps, and the Buddha explains this in 5 steps, sometimes longer than that if you want to expand it. But the shorter version is Sutta, Datta, Vachasa, Parichita, Manasa Anupekita, Dittya, Suppatividdha. So sutta means listening, yeah, listening to the teachings. These days you can also read them. Sutta. Dhata means you retain what you read or what you listen. It's not like you say, oh, that was a nice Dhamma talk. What was it about? I don't know. No, retain means you remember. You listened attentively, yeah? Because Buddha always, very often before giving a discourse, said, Tan sunata sadhukam manasikarota, yeah? So the Buddha says, listen, pay heed, pay attention to what I'm going to say, so that when you pay attention, when it is important, yeah, when it is important, you listen attentively. When you listen attentively, then you can retain the meaning. Similar to, like, if you paid a lot of money to do one of those workshops to learn how to earn more money or improve whatever skill, because you've paid more money and it is important to you, you pay very well, right, attention. So I hope people listen to Dhamma talks like that. Maybe they should pay lots of money. And we should sell how important it is to improve your life. Then people might retain, right? I'm just joking. But when you know the importance, these things are even more important, right? And priceless. You can't afford to even pay for it. So we give it for you for free. But that doesn't mean it is not important. It is even more valuable, right? So when it is valuable and and then you pay attention, then you retain. So you listen and then you retain what you have listened, right? It is in your mind. And then vachasa parichita means you verbally practice it. You practice, you memorize it. Otherwise, also not helpful. You can retain it for a while and then you forget about it. But if you retain it and you memorize it, then you can do the fourth steps, yeah, which is manasanupekkita. That means now you mentally inspect. So you do that inspection, whatever you heard, all the teachings that you remember and and then you put them together. Yeah, you put the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, and suddenly you have that aha moment. Ah, I understand. This makes sense. This is how it works. Yeah, when that happens, ditya suppatividda, then it becomes a view. Yeah, and that is important. You have to have right view. So this is how we grow right view as well. So so it is really important that how we apply, and when we do so, where was I going with this now? Mm. Anyway, so this is important, like, so having faith, and then you learn the sutta. So I was telling, like, you have to do the homework, right? Because I'm not going to have enough time to go through the entire eightfold path, all the factors and all the places where there is joy to be had. So I'm going to just take a few and give a few examples so you can do your own homework, and then your faith and confidence will grow. But not only that, together with that, a lot of insights, because you will understand and why and how these things work, right? So we will just start just with right view. And right view, it's again a big topic, yeah. But right view brings so much peace to life. Now think about it. Yeah, what happens when we have wrong view? When we have wrong view, that is asking from the world what it cannot give us. And that is asking for suffering, right? And we all do this. Why do we sometimes fight and expect things we are never going to get from people who are not going to give it to us? But we still keep, right? Even with our spouses, from our children, from our parents for decades. People sometimes never seem to learn. They keep expecting things that are not in line with the Dhamma, not in line with the right view, but based on wrong view, based on greed, hatred, and delusion, our sense of self, our desires, our ill will. These things, the views born from those, unfortunately, this is what we get conditioned in the world, yeah, with our education systems and various different cultures. All of these things, unless it is the Dhamma, there are lots and lots of wrong views in ourselves. So wrong views brings a lot of suffering and difficulty and friction and far from peace. But when we are able to apply right view, yeah, right view, then it brings peace. That means we align, we learn to accept When life brings us challenges, presents us with challenges, it doesn't mean that we have to suffer so much, but the mental suffering can reduce when you accept and understand why things are the way they are, right? For example, you might get to know that you have cancer. So, what to do? Well, that's the reality. Uh, Falling down and crying isn't going to really help. Can make it even worse. But if you have acceptance of it and see what you can do, and some cancers, get cured. We don't know. So, if you have right attitude, acceptance itself, and becoming calm and peaceful, and meditate, it's even better. So this is just a little bit, but right view. Also, like when there is a difficult person in your life, understanding why people are difficult, the conditioned nature of human beings, us and other people. We are a sum total of what has happened to us this life and many past lives. Yeah, who we are is just a conditioned process. We have many programs. We are like robots. Yeah, conditioned by our programs, running those things out. And unless there is right view and mindfulness enough established, we pretty much go through that flow. So the only reason is when we have right view and enough mindfulness, then things can slowly change and we can reprogram. And this is where enlightenment is possible. But for the vast majority of people, not enough right view, not enough mindfulness, and we are included. Yeah, we also don't probably have enough right view, right, enough mindfulness all the time. So, what do you expect then? To do stupid things yourself and other people will do them. So when you realize that, then it's not so bad. Even and you can deal with it without getting too upset and angry and worried about it. And even more, the right view says your intentional actions have consequences. So, whatever this difficult person is doing, if it is harmful and hurtful for themselves and others, of course, you understand, my goodness, they have to face the consequences of these things, right? What's going to happen to them then? Do you say, yes, they deserve it, good, and ha ha ha? Or you say, well, you have compassion because you understand they were conditioned, they couldn't help it. The people who do all kinds of silly things or hurtful, harmful things, actually they do it because they can't do any better. We just have false expectations of human beings. They're where they're at. Obvious thing to understand at that point is whenever they're doing something stupid or silly or harmful or hurtful, their right view is not strong enough, their mindfulness is not strong enough, and their habits are taking the better of them. Yeah, that's all. But you can't give excuses saying, excuse me, I didn't have enough mindfulness, I was so tired, blah blah blah. Can I have less karma? But it's not like that. Yeah. So I mean, karma is complicated, but still, I mean, you can see the conditionality, but at the same time, still for many people, they will have to live the consequences. So the natural response as a kind, good, well practiced, wise practitioner is compassion. Yeah. So when people do bad things or difficult things, compassion can come up as a result of right view. This is just few examples. Right view is so big, but just to show how right view can bring incredible amount of peace to our life, calm to our life. It's peace and calm is more than happiness, right? It's another next level. So this is just opening up that contemplation, how the first factor brings happiness. And then right intention, yeah? Intentions of renunciation, yeah? Because that is where people try to understand. I like my nice food, I like my movies, I love my singing and dancing, I love my relationships, all of those things that bring some gratification. How can letting that go brings happiness? Yeah, but think for a moment the investment of energy to maintain a relationship, even a good one, let alone a difficult one. Yeah. And the amount of energy and effort and difficulty that goes into, you know, earning the money that you need to go on your holiday, to buy all of these yummy, expensive things, whatever it is. Yeah. So accumulating things, that's why I said earlier also, sensual world robs us of literally money because the gratification lasts for a short time, but you have to work really hard to earn that money. But letting go of things slowly, slowly, needing only the simple things to sustain this body and mind, to live the spiritual path at ease. So, not being too strict and giving a hard time, the Buddha never recommended that middle path, but whatever is just right for whoever. I mean, every person needs different things. Some people are happy on the floor, some people need a cushion, some people need a hard cushion, some people need a soft cushion, but that's okay, right? Whatever it is, just so that your body is at ease and you can meditate. So simple things. So whatever food that is conducive for your health conditions, simple, and that's it, not going to the extreme end. So whatever it is, like giving up the many of these sensuality, especially relationships, yeah, like married relationships or things like that, especially not all relationship, like relationship with your spiritual teacher as a teacher and a student, not that, not that kind of relationship. I'm talking about like a normal relationship between a husband and a wife kind of relationships. These things, yeah, brings also a lot of difficulties, even though people think as this as the highest form of happiness. They put it up on a pedestal, right? And almost venerate it in the world, thinking this is what I want. If I have this perfect relationship, I'll be happy forever, is what people think. But, we know the reality of these things. But when we give these things up and know how to live independently, yeah, when we are dependent on somebody or something for our happiness, so whether it is a person or a thing, external things cannot be, controlled. We know that by now very well. So when they move, we move because we are connected, we are dependent on it. But when we are independent, when our happiness is independent of people and things, then we are truly happy. So this is what renunciation, the true renunciation does. Yeah, it takes a while. It happens in stages, but you can see how renunciation actually brings incredible amounts of joy and happiness to life. Just to rub it off on all of you, except for one venerable in the audience. I'm not being cruel, but I'm just saying, I don't have to deal with a husband. I don't have to deal with kids. I don't have to be on traffic going to work. I don't have to go shopping. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. I actually like to doing those things as well. I don't mind. But you know what I mean, yeah? These things are incredible investments of our energy and time. For what? Yeah, it does give gratification. I don't deny that. And I mean, you can do it in right way. That's what the whole thing is about. I mean, not talking about everybody to renounce and become a monastic, but simplify your life. Yeah, don't give up your husband or wife unnecessarily. You can learn to deal with them, practice together, make them your kalyana mitra, and that's okay. Yeah. So there are ways of dealing with this, but I'm just saying the power of true renunciation or degrees of renunciation brings, it's, very related. They go together in the same direction. So also, of course, the other two is very obvious, yeah, non-cruelty and non-ill will, yeah, kindness and generosity and gentleness. Sorry, not generosity, kindness and gentleness of the mind. Definitely straight away when you're kind to somebody, yeah, when you even give a compliment, you can see how beautiful you feel in the mind. Yeah, it brings joy. And you can also reflect for a moment the opposite of that. Yeah. How, when you snap back at somebody, or even the tone of your voice was a bit sarcastic, how yucky that feels. It's a form of pain in the mind. So, with the right intention, has a lot of like intention, where you're coming from, how beautiful is your heart, how kind, how generous, how, all of these things, the intentions of kindness and gentleness, non-cruelty is the source of happiness. And then when it comes to speech, again, how you speak and action and your livelihood, to give that in a nutshell, it's like being good feels good. Straight, very simple, right? So you can see these are the parts of and quite obvious, because the wrong kind of speech gets you into trouble. In fact, really interesting thing, like when it comes to monastic life, we have the precept of not eating after midday, and there are certain evening allowables, and these are very complicated, because some of those Pali words and the plants and things that were allowed, people don't know what and what and what, and in every different monastery is different, and people are confused. Can I take milk? Can I not take milk? Can I take cheese? And this, that, and worry so much about what you can and can't take in the evening. So worried about what goes in your mouth. So I often tell, don't worry so much about what goes in your mouth, but be very careful about what comes out from it. We make much more bad merit and get ourselves into more trouble because of what comes out of our mouth, right? Yeah, this is so true. So we have to be very careful, 'cause at the very least, if you ate the wrong thing, you could die. Yeah, but with the things, some things that can come out of your mouth can take you end up in the hell realms as well, and difficulty for many eons. So it's really dangerous. So therefore, to be careful. So you can see, like, right speech, how that brings joy, happiness, and feel good feeling of doing the right thing, also by action, and the opposite, how it burns us when you do the wrong thing, and a livelihood as well. So I only very briefly showing how happiness is to be had in every factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, and the effort, right? Effort, right? When you know that you are trying your very best to do the right thing, to grow in wholesome qualities and reduce the unwholesome. This is what right effort, right? When you know that you're doing the right thing, itself gives you a lot of energy. But when it has the results, when you do the right thing, you usually get good result in your mind. Yeah. We can't control other people's comments, but you know why you did something and how you feel inside. And this is the important part. And then that brings energy. And this energy is different kind of energy, because it is mostly mental energy, which is joy in your mind. Yeah. When you put in right effort, right? Effort actually turns into what is called Vayama. Samavayama turns into virya, yeah, energy, natural energy of the mind. So it's kind of beautiful how effort transforms into virya, which is energy, which is joy in the mind. Yeah. So that's right, effort. And then, of course, mindfulness. Mindfulness have incredible ability to protect us from danger, from difficulty, because we know it stops us from getting into trouble if we have. And we understand mindfulness is what reminds us about right view. Mindfulness is what sort of is there when we engage in right effort. And all of those things cannot do without mindfulness. I mean, two levels of mindfulness, the situational awareness that we discussed last week, and also the right mindfulness, which is the satipatthana. So you can see just a little bit, I've spoken about this again in the past, just how much difficulty we get into because we have this wrong mindfulness about the human body. Our normal wrong mindfulness is that a human body, mine and others, is beautiful. A human body brings pleasure. Human body is, nice, and you got to have one and you want another one as well to enjoy. This is the wrong view when we don't understand what a body is. So we go for things, yeah, sensuality. But you know how much trouble comes with that. But when we have right mindfulness, just only about even the body itself, then we don't get into that trap, right? We don't get so worried about how we look, what other people, and getting attracted to other people, all of those things. I mean, so much suffering in the world, right? Right now, people suffer from obesity, having wanting to trying to look good. All of these things. Many people are not happy with their bodies, yeah, and all that because of the wrong view, because they think the body got to be like this, got to be like that, and the health of the body. All of these things, all of those pains, anxieties, worries, goes away when you have right mindfulness of the body established, right? So now I'm really running out of time, pretty much 1 minute to go. So homework, you can do how right view about feeling, right mindfulness about feeling, mind, and Dhamma. Yeah, because we've gone through those Dhamma talks before. There's so much happiness that comes as a result when we have established our mind on the right mindfulness. Yeah. And of course, right, samadhi, we already read that in that meditation psychology sequence. It's a whole path of bliss and beyond. Yeah. So then we can see the whole entire path, starting with faith, which is not really even directly in there, but it is because of faith and confidence that we take on board the Noble Eightfold Path. So it's kind of almost a prerequisite. And this is how starting point of right view grows as well, because you take right view on board as teachings, as the word of the Buddha, and then once you apply it, then the right view starts to grow with your own experience. So now you can see these are just, I'm only scratching the surface just to show there's so much happiness to be had in every part of the path. And of course, the sutta that I only read very briefly and only extracts also was about happiness in this life and happiness for future life. And there are many other suttas and many other factors that brings happiness. One, a brief one, is generosity, right? Generosity, happiness born from getting versus happiness born from giving. Just that much, contemplating that, what brings happiness. Yeah? Generosity of the heart, because getting what you like and enjoying it, or giving what you like or something nice to somebody else, and the happiness born from that, and we know which is far superior. So generosity. So there's many aspects, in fact almost all aspects of the path actually brings happiness. So that's what I would like to say. We have even gone beyond time. So still, if anybody would like to ask any questions, either in the room or in the Zoom room, you are very welcome.
Thank you, Ayya Karunika. It was so beautiful this talk because I felt like I thought, oh yeah, I remember feeling that kind of happiness at different points. My question was bringing it back to when you were talking about the importance of Kalyana Mittas. And there was one point where you said that, sometimes even if maybe you haven't cultivated the same level, but being surrounded by those people, you sort of get brought up and become like that. And it reminded me when I was in Indonesia, there was a teacher who mentioned that we are like a mirror
Mm-hmm.
and we sort of like reflecting what is happening in the external world. And of course, in that sense, we can easily get influenced by it. But I wanted to ask if that's actually some teachings of the Buddha, this concept that we are like a mirror of what's around us.
I believe so. Let me check with my mom, who's an expert on sutta. Do you know that we are to act like mirrors for each other? I think the Buddha says that, but I can't remember. No, that is the Rahula Sutta Buddha say. That's for your own mind. Yeah, but that's your own mind. That's different. That's the mirror one. Yeah, but each other as well. As well as this is an understanding. I got to check. Parinibbana Sutta. Okay. Say you have to be a mirror because they ask him whether uh, everyone, whether stream winner or a non-returner and all. So everyone knows their wholesome qualities. So if you want to judge yourself, you are a stream winner, you like a mirror, see
your qualities.
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure. My mom says also about Parinibbana Sutta, but the most of the time the Buddha use the term mirror is like mirror is to see your own self, right? Usually we use the mirror to reflect our own image. So that's usually how the Buddha used. He actually used that to his son Rahula in Rahula Maharahula Vada Sutta, where he actually asked what's the purpose of a mirror, and that is to reflect your own qualities, yourself, right? But there is this understanding amongst us, but I will look into it and get back to you because it's a very important one even for me to remember. I've taken it on board because it makes sense that like even in a monastic community, like we rub off each other and we sort of get, but it's not quite like a mirror, but it's more like uh, a pot of dirty potatoes and water, and you shake and shake and shake and shake, they rub off all the dirt and eventually become clean, right? This kind of idea is there. And also to help, like for example, with this is in the Vinaya, for example. So at the end of the 3 months rains retreat, which we are in right now, so the last day is called Pavarana. Pavarana means giving invitation, is that the whole community then stayed together the whole month together, and often don't going anywhere. So things can happen. So whatever it is, that is when you give invite the whole thing. If you have seen, heard, or experienced me doing something unskillful, harmful, hurtful, please out of compassion admonish me. Yeah, so then that gives the opportunity for the others to tell what they have seen, heard, if there is anything unskillful. So it goes around the whole room, or everybody. Even the Buddha says this to everybody, so everybody can tell back to the Buddha, everybody. So in that occasion, it is kind of how it's not like said like a mirror, but this is where, so we can give invitation. So for example, I also invite my fellows in monastic life, some of especially people who I live a long time, privately also, not just only during these 3 months, all the time. Give a lifetime invitation. Please, if you ever see, because it's very hard, even though Buddha says, look in your mirror, our mirrors are very distorted, right? Smeared with oil. So we don't see the perfect view of who we are, right? We think, oh, I'm really good, and I've been really pain in the backside for somebody else. And we go and see that, right? But other people can see that. And so in that respect, it's not because if our mirrors are often distorted, so we invite others to do. So this kind of thing is there. So, but it is done through invitation, not without invitation, right? So only if you receive an invitation, you can tell somebody. But otherwise, you don't go and tell people, look, you're like this and you're like that, and really tell people off. And it's also not done in a way of telling off. It's said in a non-violent communication, in a kind, peaceful way where the person understands the person is coming from compassion, because you also give the invitation out of compassion, please admonish me. So something like that. This is there in the Vinaya, right? So it's not in the suttas, but there could be a sutta, but I can't remember straight away. But yeah, that's what I had to say.